This is the special meeting for December 16, 2025, convening at 6:06. Madam City Clerk, can you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Bregman, Councilmember Nakanishi, Councilmember Craig Hensley.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hothy.
Here.
Mayor Yepez.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, before we start, I would like to propose a change in the order of the items because I know some council members are constrained on time, so I propose switching the order. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Do I need to do roll call vote? Oh, there it is. All right, it passes.
Oh, no, we have to actually vote, sorry. There we go.
All right, it passes.
Which brings us to item B2, which is to discuss agenda items for fiscal year 2026-2027 planning session, and I'll turn it over to our interim city manager.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, we will be kicking off the development of the fiscal year 26-27 budget with an all-day planning session scheduled for January 28th. And to allow staff time to be able to do any research, prepare any council communications reports or background information, we scheduled a time this afternoon to receive some guidance on agenda topics that the council would like us to put on that 28th meeting agenda in preparation. In the council communication for this item, I provided a handful of ideas that have come up during one-on-one meetings I've had with council members. So I'll just read them off briefly here. One is to review the City Council's strategic vision. So many of the attachments of this item are related to that particular topic. That is an event that is something the council did in 2023. And so if that is something that you all want to talk about on the 28th, our plan is to be able to update as of December 25 where the city has stand in accomplishing many of those objectives within the strategic vision. Another item is what I'm going to call new short-term initiatives that would be achievable within a budget cycle or about a 12-month period. We are starting a discussion about the pension stabilization policy as one of the financial policies in the 26-27 budget. And that's something that will be coming up through ultimately the Finance Committee and then to the Council as a potential policy discussion. Deferred maintenance of parks and streets is something that has come up fairly regularly. And more recently, I'm going to add facilities because of the fact that we've had to temporarily close our jail due to facilities needing to be replaced, specifically the boilers there at the police building. And then implementation of the downtown specific plan and economic strategic plans. You have two very significant documents that you'll be considering for adoption here in the coming months. There'll be a whole implementation component of those plans. And so that's something I would kind of throw in there as an idea. These are all things just to spark a conversation among the council. The direction we're asking for this afternoon is for you to give us direction on what items to appear on the 28th, and then we'll take that time between now and then and prepare. So with that, we are available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, City Manager, for making the presentation. Does the council have any clarifying questions for the council or the City Manager?
Yes, Mayor. Are we going to start with the existing strategic plan as kind of the framework, the big rocks, and move from there? Or are you asking, what are you asking in that regard? Let's just put it that way.
So certainly, the top of the list was the strategic plan review.
Right, okay.
And so intentionally, absolutely, I think I can be safe that would be among the top priorities for the council to look at on the 28th. That would be the first item on that agenda. That then potentially would then inform the direction we receive on any additional items.
Okay.
So,
I would just comment, I'm still comfortable with the headings. You know, I think that we're hitting all of the same things in terms of priorities. It's just a matter of how we individually may see prioritization of objectives and action items out of that. But I would say that the 8 major items, downtown economic development, fiscal health, housing, infrastructure, parks, public safety, and public well-being, are pretty good, solid starting points for the next level down of objectives that we would set, goals and objectives.
Okay, thank you. So, well, we'll start with you guys. What do you guys want to talk about? And then I will share what I want to share with you guys about what are my objectives for this year. And when you guys want to ask a question, this is for the staff too. Press on the icon to raise your hand, and I will call you guys in that order that you guys present that. So it's a little more organized discussion. And so yeah, let's start. Yeah, I'll open the floor for you guys to start saying your idea. Mikey?
So I think certainly following the framework of, some of the pillars where, we've talked through at length at these strategy sessions would be worthwhile, but I think also looking at funding opportunities. I think we have a lot of aspirational goals here across the board, and I know we're going to have some revenue issues, and so certainly that's going to have to be a part of the conversation. One of the pillars here for infrastructure, there have been times in the past where we've been real creative about how to build out infrastructure. I look at like the downtown, streets project, that revitalized downtown, in the early 2000s. That's one that's often referred to. And, I know we're doing something similar with the animal shelter, but certainly just wanting to think through all options as we look at like key infrastructure needs. Certainly one of the big bottlenecks for development right now is going to be, substations and stormwater drainage out to Pixley Slough, but just kind of having a holistic conversation that looks at some of these large pain points.
So I think that I'm looking at the investment we've made in the economic development plan, the downtown plan, our partners at Visit Lodi, what they've invested in the sports and facility and destination planning. And I think to Councilman Hothy's point, Vice Mayor Hothy's point, sorry, we're changing titles now. I do think that we have to be cognizant of what these things are going to cost. That said, I think some of the priorities that I'm identifying moving forward, and this is a 1 to 3 year, they're all kind of captured together for me because some of these are going to take more than a year. But, one of my goals is to preserve downtown's historic character, and so putting on the table passage of a preservation ordinance and a financial incentive like the Mills Act, and also regulatory incentives, use of the historic building code, streamlining reviews, would be a good first step as part of the implementation of the downtown plan. I'm very interested in multimodal transportation for the downtown, so looking at opportunities there. And then incentivizing more the use of our microloan funds that we have budgeted for to make sure that those are being used in ways that support small business development and even life safety improvements. I know the chief is concerned about some of our older buildings downtown. And then on the economic development side, we have had in here completion of the downtown or the economic development plan. Great, we'll get that done hopefully February or so we can cross that off the list. But we also put under economic development the White Slough Public Safety Training Facility. And I think we need to, again, to Mikey's point, find the funding resources, whether it's through the feds, through DOJ, which may have some programs available. We need to try and keep that moving with our partners at Delta and the county and the state. And I think that's where we need to talk about a lobbying firm to work with us on big projects like that where we need the funding support. I know also under fiscal health, ensuring that the leaders and staff retain focus on fiscal priorities. I know our city manager is working on the financial review and getting that to us, I believe, Mr. Lindsay, in February.
Correct. That'll be coming February.
All right, so that will be informative to us, and we may have some policies coming out of that. But fiscal health also relates to the Access Center, as does housing. that's one of our biggest financial nuts to crack, and we're going to have to do that with our partners. So that, to me, is going to be almost the biggest issue we've got going on. And then I think on the infrastructure, I agree with the council member on we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Just a question, Mr. Lindsay, I think we had mentioned at some point doing a roads assessment, a roads study. Are we looking at funding that in a future budget, or?
Yeah, the council actually did allocate the funding for that, and I'm going to look over to our interim public works director, provide a status on where we stand with that.
Yeah, we do have the funds for the study,
Okay,
and
great.
the RFP is being worked on right now, so we expect to go out probably in January.
Okay, so that, back to our infrastructure issues, I think roads is critical. I know we discussed with the community a traffic study for Turner Road, I believe, as well. I don't know if that factors into that assessment or not, but that's something I'll be looking for in this next year. And then lastly, I think with our, in particular with our parks, we've really got to look at some opportunities for partnering with parks, public-private partnerships, to see if we can get our sports facilities and entertainment facilities solidly financed in some way for improvements and address the deferred maintenance. I, in particular, am interested in Lawrence Park. I know Councilmember Bregman's interested in the Great Bowl, so we may need a lot of help from private partners to address those issues. And public safety, kudos to Chief Johnson. You can check off ALS and you can check off with CENCAL 2 of your major programs, so that's the way it's supposed to work. So really appreciate that. I know Chief Garcia is trying to get his team back up to full force again, so fingers crossed we'll be there once again, and then you'll have struck your goal off as well. Lastly, I think under public well-being, we have never mentioned the library in this, and I think that's maybe an opportunity under public well-being. I think we just got to call out the library, because every other department or division is mentioned in this plan, but not the library. So I think we will need to put that within the public well-being component at a minimum. So those are my key comments.
If I may, a few different items that I have on, most of which I'm not looking for funds for, but I think would actually help with the revenue issue. Number one would be permit process reform, right? Simplifying the process. I do believe we have good staff. I do believe we can have better systems, more communicative systems. That would be number one, and that is a part of economic development. It's part of revenue. If our city isn't growing, we're dying. A part of that is also infrastructure, so I would like to see some type of, again, plan for that and outlay. As mentioned, we do have quite a bit of parks and rec projects that need to be accomplished. I would love to actually sift through all the parks in Lodi and figure out which ones are going to need a massive amount of funds, which ones are smaller projects that are more easily attainable. And a part of this mission, figuring out, is there any parks that have other partners that we could be working with? So again, prime example would be Great Bowl. We should be working with the school district and soon to be a new nonprofit, hopefully, with, again, fixing up that center. And when I look at the Great Bowl in general, it's again mostly utilized by Lodi High, and so why wouldn't we work with the school district on a funding source there? So I would love to be able to have some type of review of actually all of our parks to see what's the use, what could be the use, and again, possible other revenue sources and partnerships. A part of our parks, though, too, is an excellent opportunity. Sponsorships. And this is no new item to this city. In fact, if you go to many of our parks, it'll be sponsored by Lions or Kiwanis or Rotary or even, Milas Modular, DD Construction. And so as we know, many of these names are surrounding our parks for good reason. But we don't have a bona fide program for said sponsorships that's citywide. And so what I would really like to see is some type of online platform to be able to have those major donors and or small donors be able to participate in, again, keeping up our city parks. And what I think we'll find is, again, both those small and large donors. I mean, we have so many nonprofit groups already. Some of them even aren't legal entities. For instance, actually, is Friends of Lodi Lake, Lisa, is that a legal entity or is that just a group of? It is a nonprofit, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent group of people too, and they did that by themselves, right? And so I think the city should be fostering more of those groups and being the leader thereof. Last thing that I would mention, I think we need to become a little bit more savvy when we're dealing with the homelessness issue, with vacant vehicles, RVs, everything else. I even spoke to our city attorney earlier today about it. 10 days for a RV to be moved. To me, I feel like we could be creative in the sense of figuring out what we can do to be able to move those vehicles sooner. And whether that's no parking at night or, again, having a certain permit process or for parking, which could be free for said business owners. Whatever it is, we could be more creative, and we should at least bring that to a city meeting. And so really what I'm looking at is most things in the city would actually cost little to no cost. The only item that I did bring up today that would cost the city any amount of funds would be the infrastructure, which, as we all know, if we're not investing in our city, no one's going to invest in us. So having said that, I think that's about 3 different items. Thank you.
All right, I kind of want to echo some of the stuff that you guys covered because, yeah, like for example, finding new sources of revenue, also economic development. I think many of my things are actually economic development. Like for example, customer service. I feel we need to do better in customer service, and it's just not in one department; it's all of the departments. So I want to know what surveys they use, what has worked in one department, and what is working, so we can standardize the whole process of serving anybody that interacts with the city, which we could be with electric utility, me, the fire department, the police department, any department. They should have a good outcome. Like we can be professional, we can do better, and I think we can do better if we have a baseline where we are and how we can improve. If we just say we want to improve, does not help at all. We need to have a baseline, and we can improve by 20%, 30%, or whatever the metric is. I just don't know right now where we are. So I would like, when we have this meeting, we have some metrics about the customer service. And obviously the permit process, that's been always on everybody's mind. So I want to explore that idea, how to make it more efficient, more effective, easier to get a permit. And number 2, the west side annexation and the south side annexation. What kind of vehicles we can use to finance those areas? What will require from the city, from bonds, or how we can do that, how we can accomplish that, and what will be the timeline too? Because I understand that this could be probably like 2-3 years, but I want to start those discussions on how we can accomplish that. And finally, in safety, I want to revisit the cameras for District 4, how we can improve that and see if it's possible right now, because we're going to do it when I start council, but then the fire at Lodi Lake happened, so then those funds went over there to do the camera project. So I want to revisit that if it's possible, just to see how much it is now that all those advances with AI, maybe it's cheaper now. I don't know. So yeah, that's my comments.
Mayor Yepes, can I make one statement just
Yes.
for a subject item on this? I do have some residents here for item B1. My understanding is Councilmember Craig is going to be leaving at 5, and that's why we switched the items around. So it's most likely going to be another probably half hour to an hour before we get to that item. Just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
I don't think so. I think,
No?
I mean, unless you're looking for more direction, I think, have we given you what you needed? I'm sorry, Mayor, but,
No, you're correct. I think we're just going to go to public comments and then, yeah, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we should go to that. Clerk, do we have any public comments?
I don't have any comment cards for this item, but you're welcome to open it to the public if anyone would like to come up on B2.
Okay, we would like to open it for public comments right now. Seeing none, then we will move to final comments from the council.
I just would
Mayor.
want to echo Mayor Bregman's comment about community development and the permitting issues in the city. Just, again, I don't want to say it goes without stating, because we've been stating it at a lot of public meetings, so just echoing that.
And I would like to thank John and his department for some of the work they've done. It is being pushed in the right direction. I think our most recent win would have been reporting on how many permits we're actually getting through in a given, I believe, quarter. James, if that's correct, can you give us a small update on that reporting system?
Certainly. So
newsletter.
we've started a monthly reporting, and we've done now 2 to the city council. We are due to get the next one out that is showing the major permits that are going, the timelines that it's taking, time it's within City Hall, time it's within the applicants. And so far, I've not received any feedback, positive or negative, from the council on those monthly reports. And the next one will be coming out, and so I would encourage you to take a look at that. If that's something that is fulfilling that request, wonderful. If there is some additional information, we're happy to receive that and then work with staff to modify that report.
I think unfortunately in my email I lost those reports, so can you send that to all of us or the?
Yeah, you'll be getting the next one soon.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you'll get to see it. And then you can remind me on that. Since I have my mic on, Mayor, would it be appropriate, I could summarize everything that I heard into potential agenda topics for January 28th? Okay. The first one was review of the strategic vision, and that would be number 1 on the agenda item. Number 2, opportunities to increase funding. And the subcategories within that agenda topic include operations, existing and future infrastructure, including streets, looking at additional legislative and lobbying support to increase funding opportunities, the training facility out at White Slough. So that would be the category of opportunities to increase funding. Opportunities for service improvements, all service delivery points, permit processes would be the category there. And then we would have public safety, opportunities for public safety improvements, mitigating some of the impacts the homeless population or unhoused population has in the community, I heard, as well as using technology to be a force multiplier for crime response and prevention. The last item was, I'm going to throw out there, it wasn't said, but I heard it in different ways, and that is the development of a parks master plan. So many aspects of what I heard about parks is components of what we would contain in a citywide parks master plan. And that includes leveraging public-private partnerships, identifying the use case for each of the city parks, and then it develops then an improvement program that would then last over quite a number of years on which improvements we're going to be investing in which parks and when. And that also provides us kind of a roadmap moving forward. That would be the items that I've summarized based on the topics that I heard, and I'd be looking for feedback to see if that was correct.
So where are we adding the customer service part in the,
Opportunities for service improvements.
okay, and also the annexation of the south and west side will be in that part, or there will be more sources of income?
Opportunities to increase funding, or we could have a separate annexation discussion completely. But the idea of what I heard was the infrastructure needed to support the annexation. And that's where, okay, how are we going to finance that infrastructure? And that kind of rolled that up into the funding category. But that's my summary. Please, if you want to break these out into finer points as specific agenda items, we're happy to do that as well.
No, I think that's very comprehensive aggregation of the topics, and I'll open up to the council if they would like to add something or some clarification.
I would just add, and this is funding as well, clearly, but implementation of these plans that we're going to have in place, the downtown plan, And the economic development plan, the kind of low-hanging fruit opportunities that may be out there, maybe they're an item that doesn't have a cost associated with it, but since we haven't seen the plans yet, I don't know how to even quite address that at this point in time. But there will be two major plans, and we want to demonstrate progress towards implementing the goals and objectives of those plans.
I agree. January 28th discussion on documents that haven't been presented to you in final form yet, that could prove challenging. Within the funding discussion, we could definitely indicate, we'll find room, let's just say. My commitment would be we'll find room within that discussion for both the economic strategic plan and also the downtown specific plan. It just will not be at any level of specificity until those plans come forward.
Okay, that's fine.
A couple comments. As far as a master plan for parks, I would like to see if there's any chance that we're able to not, I kind of worry about too many plans going at once, because it really does take a toll on the time that our community spends on it. And if there's anyone in the audience, it's usually the same group. Not that we don't love you, we do. I would be curious as to see if there's any other format that we can have than what we have been doing. So for instance, if we're doing town halls per se, with stakeholders, which would be a little bit more efficient and possibly easier on our budget, because these plans aren't cheap. What I've also noticed too is sometimes if we're having a council meeting in town hall, we'll get a better attendance. So just a thought to look into, and if we could have some opinions on it, that would be great. Last item, let's see here. What were we talking about just before this? I apologize. James, I was going to make a comment on it.
The specific plan implementations? Annexations?
I'll bring it up later. It left my mind. Thank you. Leave it to the young guy.
And I think for clarifications, like this discussion is so everybody puts what is their objectives, but obviously we cannot do everything. So this is more a discussion right now, what is everybody's objectives, and we can look at a high priority for each council members, and we can focus on those things next year. And that is then a multi-2 years start a little bit on that. So yeah, that's, I think.
And I remembered, and it's a detail, but it's an important one, is as far as the funding sources, I would like to see if bond financing makes any sense. So for instance, if we're expecting, if we invest in this area, that we'll see a return on that money, then that would be great to know. And maybe some education again on municipal bond financing. Thank you.
All right, since, so you got your direction, James?
Thank you. I have my roll-up topics and the specifics within each topic, and I appreciated the additional comments. So I have what I need for the 28th. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So now, Madam City Clerk, can you introduce the next item?
Item B1, which is to provide information to council on the typical resident request process, such as the all-way stop sign request. And our Public Works team is going to go ahead and present on this item.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So we're going to talk about traffic requests and the process. Previous discussions we've had that are kind of related. We did a shirt sleeve early last year to talk about kind of overall traffic safety, where we kind of focused on our traffic department and our staffing, what type of studies we do, and the various traffic control devices. So this one is going to focus a little more on like an all-way stop. And just big picture, we do get about 150 requests per year for traffic requests, not just all-way stop, but on all of them. We have 2 traffic division employees that handle all of those amongst their other duties. Typically, we get back to the person making the request in 2 or 3 business days, just acknowledging their request. And then depending on the kind of the scope of what's needed, probably 3 to 5 week average on getting the studies done and getting some type of response back. We'll kind of go into that in a little bit. But So for an always stop request, we're going to use the Oak and Crescent intersection. That's our most recent one that's come up a couple of times in the last few meetings. Just big picture, you can see on the map there. That one circled is that intersection. It's currently a two-way stop with those stop controls on Oak Street. And then the street to the north is Pine, and we have an always stop there. And the street to the south is Walnut, and we have an always stop there. So we typically get a resident concern, and this one, in the case here, was of heavy traffic, speeding, and a safety concern. And the request was always stop would slow down traffic, improve visibility, reduce the risk of collisions, increase pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, and also just provide a greater peace of mind for nearby residents. And that's a kind of a typical concern that we get with our other traffic requests. So once we receive that, we start to go into what we call the warrant. That's the analysis that doesn't meet these different codes and these different requirements. And so the standards for those analysis are the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. We never say that, we say MUTCD. That's what everybody uses. And that covers the federal requirement, which is the MUTCD. And then the California Vehicle Code requires another version of that. And so what Caltrans has done is they had modified the MUTCD for a California-specific one. So that's what's adopted in California. That's what we use. It covers both the state and the federal requirements. And then we also utilize the Highway Design Manual, the California Highway Design Manual, for stuff like stopping sight distance and some other things. So just kind of getting through that background. The two main functions or factors in that warrant is collisions, and that we pull from a database that we keep fairly up to date. And then the other factor is the minimum traffic volumes, how many cars drive on those roads. And for that, we do have like our major roads, we keep a database of that, but the smaller roads, those don't get checked as often, especially like in interior streets, they don't change that much year to year. So we don't have the staff time to go check all of those every year. So those are on a request basis. And that's kind of why the timeline on responses can depend, because usually we don't have recent volumes. So we'll go do that. And most of town, the volumes are heavily impacted by schools. And so when school's out for the summer or the winter, you can't do those volume counts during that time. So that's why there's kind of a big range of response times. Kind of getting into these two factors, the first one being collisions. The warrant is based on, is there 5 correctable collisions within a 12-month period? So we would typically look back on a 5-year past basis if we get a new request. In the case of Oak and Crescent, we looked back to 2018 because there weren't very many. And so there were 3 total in the last 7 years, and that was through September of this year, which was what our database was up to. Out of those 3, 2 of those were DUIs, crashing into parked cars. So just those aren't correctable from a traffic control device standpoint. And then the other one was a non-collision that we didn't have a lot of data. But based on those collisions, that specific warrant isn't met from our standpoint. The next main warrant is the minimum traffic volumes. And so that requires that the major street have a 300 vehicle per hour amount of vehicles over any 8-hour period of time on an average day. So that's an average 300 vehicles per hour, with the minor street having 200 vehicles per hour. I'm sorry for all the numbers, but that's kind of what we got to look at. For Oak Street, it's considered the major one because it has more vehicles. The highest 8-hour period had an average of 121, and then Crescent had 104 vehicles per hour for that same period. So those also didn't meet that warrant. Kind of moving on to some of the smaller warrant components that could still warrant it. If you were close to meeting those 3 numbers that we just looked at, you can do a combined of those. And so if neither of those meet individually, that's the next thing to look at. And that's just an 80% reduction of collisions and volumes. And if you met both those 80% reductions, then that in itself is a warrant. In the case of Oak and Crescent, they still don't meet any of those 3 numbers for the 80% reduction. If that's still not met, we move on to the other potential considerations. The other potential considerations would be the left turn conflicts, the high pedestrian conflicts like at schools or downtown. If the two intersecting streets are designated as residential collector roadways or higher, or if there is like a site visibility restriction, that's not correctable. If there's a big wall there that prevents people from seeing, that isn't something that could easily be removed. None of those, in the case of Oak and Crescent, none of those other four potential ones were met. Moving right along. So next steps after we do a review is we inform the resident of our findings. If the warrant is met, our standard practice would be for, if the fix is like a signage and striping modification or like an always stop, we'll come to council to approve that because it's required by our traffic resolution. And then for signage and striping stuff, our street staff will do that. Doesn't have a huge cost, you know, a couple hundred to a couple thousand, depending on how many signs, how much striping, but we do that in-house. If the warrant that we were looking at was a traffic signal and it met the warrant there, then that traffic signal would be added to our signal priority list, which is kind of a separate list that has a priority of our traffic signals for future funding purposes. If the warrant is not met, our practice would be to add that intersection to our intersection study list. And what our intersection study list is a list that we keep forever, and we reanalyze it every year. So every year we go through all these and see, has there all of a sudden been a bunch of accidents that would possibly trigger a warrant looking at more things, or is it an area that we know traffic's increased significantly that we would go out and put in more counters to get updated stuff. Just kind of a quick history on Oak and Crescent, because that's what we are kind of centering this discussion about. It was actually added to the intersection study list back in 1987. So every year since then, it's been looked at from a collision data standpoint and a big picture traffic volume standpoint. In 2002, larger stop signs were installed, as well as cross traffic does not stop signs. All the intersections on our intersection study list are ranked compared to the other like intersections, and those are ranked based on traffic volumes and collisions within a 3-year period. And so Oak and Crescent currently is ranked 111th out of 314, and ranked number 1 would be considered the worst intersection, the highest number of collisions and traffic volume combination. The other thing we did just kind of want to mention is why we follow these standards. And we didn't really talk about speed limits, but it's worth noting that if you don't follow the required standards for speed limits, which we didn't get into, but those are not enforceable if those aren't followed. So you can write a ticket, but it'll get thrown out if the speed limit wasn't set based on the standards. Something like an always stop is enforceable if it's installed without the warrants being met, but there are some downsides in if it doesn't meet the warrants. A lot of times it's you end up with decreased compliance, meaning you drive a stop sign all the time. There's a couple that I can think of that there's never a car on the cross street, so you just inherently over time don't look as much, don't stop as much, you roll through it, and that inherently poses an additional safety concern because you just kind of stop looking for people crossing there, you stop looking for vehicles crossing there. And that's a consistent understanding between agencies as far as placing stop signs where warrants aren't met. Another kind of negative implication is you end up with increased mid-block speeds. So studies find that basically the more you have to stop, the more you try and speed up to make up for that lost time in between stops. So that's really it. We just kind of want to lay the groundwork of what our process is and what standards we use, and then open up for questions.
All right, now I'm going to move it to council comments, and here on the list I have first Councilwoman Craig Hensley.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you go, Mr. Nathan, back to the visual that shows all of the stops in that area? Okay. Can you tell me why there was never a four-way stop there, but they had four-way stops at the other adjacent intersections? I mean, I have no idea when those went in, but it seems odd that there's only a two-way.
I mean, it's not odd in that we wouldn't typically have four-way stops at like every intersection on a given street. The Walnut one, 2002. The Walnut was in 2002, so that one's been there 23 years. The Pine one was fairly recent, just in the last few years. And I mean, basically would have gone through the same process on those. The Pine one, there was a wall that was approved that impacted the sight distance that wasn't easily removable. And so that was kind of those other warrants, aside from the major ones, because that also didn't meet the collisions or volumes, at least at the last time we looked at, but that's why there are those other considerations.
I've driven down that recently and realized myself that I was expecting a four-way stop, because I hit a four-way stop and was expecting a four-way stop and knew there's another four-way stop up there. So in some instances, I think it's the perception, that I'm okay with a four-way stop there because of the fact that I, almost missed it when I went through because it's only two-way. And so I did slow down, I stopped, I looked for the four-way, I realized it's not a four-way. So I think that, and my concern that, that this is a greater peace of mind issue. If we did something that is stricter than the guidance is provided by the state, not lesser than, but your implications are that we would cause more accidents? I'm not quite sure why I follow that line of thinking.
So the general consensus from traffic engineering agencies is that when you start putting in unwarranted stop signs, you just get overall less people following the rules on them. And so they just kind of become a little, what's the right word? Complacent on stopping, looking all ways, because you drive through it often enough where you just know there's never cars on that side. So that tends to happen. Not saying it would happen here. That's just the general traffic agency opinion.
And we did put in, if I read this correctly, larger signs and traffic does not stop signs at some point later.
2002, correct.
Was that because we had similar complaints, or?
I know there were complaints, there were neighborhood meetings back then. I know the larger stop sign has increased visibility. It's not actually required for like a two-lane road, but I think that was part of that discussion. Also, the cross traffic does not stop, I believe, was a result of the intersection study list analysis that year. So Dorothy could chime in if.
So actually, like Sean mentioned, we look at all the intersection study lists based on the collision type, and then if there is anything that we can improve, we'll look into it. And I believe the last time, because I don't have the collision anymore, but based on the council communication last time, it was based on the type of the collision that people tends to not stopping. So that's why they're increasing the bigger size. So the size of the signs is based on the number of traveling, and so because of the two-lane the two-lane traffic on Oak Street, so you have a smaller size. So if you have a four-lane road, then you will have a bigger size because you want to make sure the two lanes, the outside lane, people can actually see from the far end from the side. So because of the visibility for or less compliance or the collision based on the people not stopping for the stop sign, so we just put in a bigger stop sign. So hopefully that will help to reduce the number of collision based on that factor.
So I think, well, one or two last questions. How much would two more stop signs cost? Do you have some idea for us?
You say maybe
Yeah, I mean,
$1,000.
yeah, $1,000. That the cost isn't an issue.
Okay. I think the concerns of the residents are justified here because I've experienced this myself on that street. Crescent is becoming busier. So notwithstanding, I understand where you're coming from, but I also, having been in the neighborhood, understand where they're coming from and the concerns they have. And one more collision is one more collision too many, particularly if it takes out a life. So I think that is one of the concerns that's been expressed. What I would like to see is to bring this to council with recommendations from staff. You know, we can look at the four-way stop. If staff has other recommendations they could make, I'd be open to hearing those as well as a consideration. But I would like this to come back for consideration by the council to a public hearing, or would it just be a public meeting?
Yeah, this would come back as a resolution to add the additional stops at this intersection. And so I think that the direction of the council this afternoon is to come back with that resolution. That would be a very straightforward action that we can respond to. If there is any alternatives that staff has not already shared with you, we'd be happy to include that in that council communication. But if the consensus of the council this afternoon is to make this go from a two-way to a four-way, that would be a clear direction to bring that back to a January meeting.
Okay. I think I would just, again, the peace of mind of the residents, the pedestrian bicycle traffic, there are baby strollers I see walk across that street quite a lot, and I do prefer that we come back with a four-way stop in that location. So in case I'm not here to vote on it, Mr. Mayor, I just want to express my support to the council for that. So thank you.
All right, now we're going to move to Mayor Pro Tem Hoti.
So I believe it's, what's it, the mute CD that is the state criteria here. Are you aware of intersections that currently have, say, like a four-way stop that perhaps do not or no longer meet the criteria set forth by like state regulation?
There's, for sure, there's ones in town, yeah. That's, would be kind of just like this, where council direction at the time, whether it was formal or just informal to staff, was to put a four-way stop there. So there are ones in town for sure.
So we've had instances where council directed for a certain type of stop sign or intersection.
I would guess that's the case, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, got it. And are we aware of like any liability or exposure we've had because of this sort of override by council?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, once, there's protections once council identifies it. It's worth noting that once you put a stop sign there, very difficult to remove it. So that there'd be a lot of liability with removing it, but there's protections once it's council's direction, so.
Yeah, got it. Well, I'll say that I'm 2 for 2 in getting, at first stop signs over at Scarborough and Century. That's a real popular one. And then over from East Stockton turning on west onto Harney Lane, that got a left traffic signal. And I state that to say that both of those are resident driven because you had neighbors who had a clear line of sight into what was happening, and perhaps it took a while for these, sort of assessments to catch up. So I would support this at the residents' request. I believe these are the folks here in this room. And this is Councilmember Bregman's district here, and this looks like something you would support too. So that I would be on the same page.
So I'm going to move now to Councilman Bregman.
2 comments I'd like to make. Number one is when you don't have a stop sign and what we are, I don't believe, are we measuring for speed right now?
No,
No, okay, so we're measuring for the number of cars going through, yes, but not the speed thereof. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns that we have and or the residents have. And yes, I have done the exact same thing. I still stop even though there's no stop sign. So in any case, that's the first portion of it. It's part of the actual assessment itself, not evaluating speed. And then the second portion of it is, I believe, and they're going to come up and speak here in a moment, but I believe they have over 100 signatures from neighbors and residents of Lodi. So that sits well with me, and I do plan on again doing what it takes to get a stop sign here. So, and thank you for other council members' support. That's it. Thank you.
just one thing with regards to speed, we didn't include it here, but one of those like kind of minor additional warrants is like if the speed's related to 40 40 or higher, that's one of the factors. I didn't include it because these aren't a 40 or higher, but that is considered just in the posted speed limit for the warrants, for the minor warrants.
Okay.
Just,
So we have 3 questions and comments, so just clarification. So first of all, can we get the list of the 314 stop signs or intersections that are in that list right now?
yeah,
Just
the
for
intersection study
councils.
list.
Yeah,
That's just for the two-way, that's the two-way ones, but yeah, we can
Okay.
provide that list to you.
Just a quick clarification, the intersection study list is all of the intersections in all different categories. Were you interested in just the two-way stop or the entire list?
The entire list.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and it's not all the intersections in town, just for clarification, all the ones that we've ever studied or been requested to study, so.
And I want a clarification when you mentioned something about the speed limit and the enforcement. Could you repeat that again?
Yeah, so there's guidelines on setting speed limits. There's pretty clear direction on how we do that. And if you post a speed limit that isn't supported by that, then there's a reduced enforcement related to that posted speed limit.
Okay, and final question. So when the council does deviate from what the guidelines are, how often have we done it here in the city? Can we get a list later? I think this is a question
I
for the future.
don't know. I think that'd be a tough
Okay.
one to come up with. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
you can
really,
email us
really
that
tough.
too.
I just know for a fact we have, just on a handful of them, but it'd be really tough to come up with that. I don't even know that we could.
Okay. Well, if we can, that'd be good to see it. Just for reference, for baseline, and and I think I am in support of this. So I'm going to open it to public comments, but I will move the I will direct that staff to do more research on that. Yeah.
And I do have one comment card from Kim Combs.
Council, City Manager, and Public Works. I'm going to go with Cameron Bregman in saying we are here investing in our community. As neighbors, we meet every first Tuesday of the month together and gather and talk about our concerns for our city and our neighborhood. So we've talked about this lengthily for our neighborhood and what we've all experienced as we all live in different areas on South Crescent Avenue. I don't doubt your stats. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. But we're there. Can you bring up the slide of the number of cars that you gathered on that for me, please? I realize that they only show probably by police reports accidents in that area. Well, we see accidents where the police department either isn't called or doesn't respond. And so the two people that have been in a collision take care of it themselves. So I doubt that's been being reported. Also, it's posted 25 miles an hour down Crescent between Lodi Avenue, I think all the way to Lockford Street. Let's do 104 cars going 40 miles an hour down Crescent is what we're experiencing. So we're hoping that with another stop, that it'll slow that down so we can get in and out of our driveways safely. We can walk our streets and our dogs on that intersection safely. And it talks about, I know he mentioned about that people that would normally not know that there's a stop sign there and start to just, be complacent and roll through it. Well, Oak Street has a stop sign, and it has the most vehicles that travel on there versus Crescent. So there's a lower number of people traveling on Crescent that hopefully wouldn't become complacent versus where they are stopping for the most part on Oak Street, where there is the higher number of vehicles. We're just, like I said, we have most of us have been there for 28 years. This is the worst we've seen it over the last several years of speeding in particular. And we've got more younger people in the neighborhood, thanks be to God. And so we're seeing babies and strollers and families walking their children around. And that intersection has just really gotten dangerous. I mean, I had to honk the other day because somebody, was not compliant in stopping at Oak Street. And so we're hoping that at least if somebody has to stop at Crescent, then if somebody is blowing Oak Street, they're slowing down to stop at Crescent. And so there's less of a chance of, somebody hitting someone going 40 miles an hour coming down Crescent if someone comes through Oak Street. We've got a new neighbor in the neighborhood. They've been there just a little over a year. They brought in themselves and their 2 children that are 4 and 6. They can't let their children out front unsupervised because they said that the cars go too fast down our street. So we're really concerned. And I'll just leave it at that, and hopefully my other 2 Padres can add to that. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mayor, that's all the comment cards I have, but you're welcome to open it up to the audience if anyone wants to speak.
Yeah, we're gonna open.
Okay. Oh, my apologies. Thank you. Okay, I have Paul Schultz.
Pull that map back up, if you don't mind, please. Mayor, city council members, thanks for hearing from me. Mrs. Kim, thanks for taking my phone call, and Mr. Bregman for meeting with me on this and stuff. I actually live in that circle at 100 South Crescent Avenue. My name's Paul Schultz. Been there 8 years. I'm 56 years old, and I've grown up in this neighborhood my whole life. Grew up on Pine and Fairmont. Our family, when I was a boy, actually got spearheaded and hit in that circle down at Pine and Crescent, and got our Ford Maverick destroyed and had injuries and stuff back when I was young at that intersection. We always wondered when they were going to get a 4-way stop there because it was so dangerous, and it eventually did. So this is my stomping grounds right here. I grew up here my whole life, back in the 70s and 80s. And my grandma bought the house here on the corner where I live now in 05. She passed in 08, and we rented it for 3 different renters until I bought it when my father passed in 17, and I've been there 8 years. And just from being over there doing the maintenance in all those years with my dad, and then now since I've moved in there, the increase in the danger in that intersection and people speeding from Pine down to Walnut has increased significantly. And, I think when we're all young and stuff like that, we drive fast. We've all done it, and done all that kind of stuff. So we recognize it, and we know what that's about with young people or somebody who's not paying attention and stuff like that. So we get it, but it's actually going on here, and it's gotten really bad. Yes, Walnut and Crescent has a 4-way stop, but it is nowhere near the safety level of Oak and Crescent. But it has it. And I'm crossing that intersection multiple times a day from going to work and what I do. But I don't know if you guys remember when I came earlier last month and I spoke to you and actually presented this on a non-agenda item and stuff. I've been working on my landscaping in that yard, all new landscaping, grass, everything for the entire year. And I don't know how many times I've been bent over dealing with something in my lawn or doing whatever and hearing blasting horns and people coming between me and him, as close as me and him, from a major accident. And I'm talking numerous times. And as well as people trying to cross. We have no, we'll get to that. I'm sure you guys are going to address this later down the road from what I understand as far as the sidewalks, getting some ramps and stuff like that there for ADA and stuff like that. But strollers, young couples, folks in walkers, elderly folks, just young couples, everybody. It's dog walking. A lot of people are out around this area a lot more now, and I've noticed it. But since I've been out there doing the landscaping and stuff and doing all the stuff in my front yard, it's multiple times a day, and it's every time. People see a green light when they leave Pine to get to Walnut, they step on it. I hear them, I hear the rev in their engines, and they're going. And then the people from Oak, a lot of times, are not stopping as well, and they're wanting to cross that. So you get that from them people coming that way. So it's a very serious issue at that intersection. And as far as the matter of and I appreciate you guys' studies and everything you guys did for it. And I'm hearing everything you say on this. With the trailer that went out there, the days that it was out there, and then the cable that was on the road was, I think, only 3 days from Miguel Terry that I talked to and stuff. That's going to give you a readout. It's going to read what it reads, but who's to say that during that period of time, the average per year or per month people that usually use that intersection and go down that street actually did during that time, while that trailer was there, while those cables were there, and that it gave the proper reading. And maybe they were out of town, maybe they went somewhere some other way or something like that. On average, I'm seeing it. My neighbor Mary Jane's seeing it. Kim, we got 97 signatures of people around that neighborhood that are supporting this. I'm seeing it firsthand. I mean, my bedroom window is on the corner of that intersection. Someone's going to land in my front yard one time from an accident, or they're going to get hit. It's not a matter of if, it's going to be when. And I'm that kind of guy. I'm going to be out there, and I'm going to be trying to help them before LPD gets there, or the fire department, or somebody like that, because that's just who I am. I don't want to see that happen for anybody.
Thank you for your comment.
Ms. Mary Jane.
Good afternoon, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Mary Jane East. I have lived in my residence at 105 South Crescent Avenue since 2001. I was part of the 2002 getting at least the cross traffic does not stop sign there, and it helped to a degree, but as it has been said, and I will be reiterating, people roll through that. And I would be rather redundant to cover a lot of what has already been said, but we in the neighborhood have been very, very, very concerned. I have since 2001 over the situation with the traffic problems. I think it's a little light to say even 40 miles an hour. I know there have to be vehicles that are going through there at 50 miles an hour. Near collisions don't get reported, but as Paul has said, frequently, I mean, it's every week, several times a week, that you hear screeching of brakes, loud, vulgar language, and screeching of brakes. I mean, it's bad, and I couldn't agree more that it's not a matter of if, it's when. In my years of living there, a car did wind up on my yard, almost took out a brick wall that was there, and if there had been a pedestrian, it would have been all over. If I had been out doing yard work, which I do less of now, but at that time I did more, I would have been wiped out. One of the cement light posts with a neighbor that is kitty corner from me, across the street from Paul, a car collided into that. You would have thought it would have been a fatal crash hitting one of those in a vehicle. It didn't happen. I'm not quite sure what a correctable collision is. Could you explain that to me or define that for me, please?
So the correctable is more like a right angle, so it's a T-bone.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, It is,
Just for clarification, correctable, when we say is by like a measure we could put in. Like, not correctable, like if they had paid more attention, they wouldn't have rear-ended them.
Okay.
That's not what we mean, because PD's told us before that every accident's correctable, but that's not what we mean, so just to clarify.
thank you for that clarification. We have been very concerned for a long time, and I would so appreciate if Lisa Craig Hensley was still here for her to hear this, that on the National Neighbor Night Out, she visited us, listened very carefully, very attentively to our concerns, and got the ball rolling on what we are now doing, getting the signatures on the petition. We could have, if we spent more time, this was over just a weekend that we got 97, and I believe it was a holiday weekend, wasn't it, Kim? And we could have got, I see my time is running out, but anyway, she was so attentive and then responsive and got all of those measures in place. The trailer with the traffic speed. I've always maintained when people a block away see that, they slow down right then. I don't know how far away that speed is measured, but everybody does that. I do that if I see one. I know that I'm not going any 20 miles or 25 miles over the speed limit, but I slow down so that I can see that my speed is right there on that monitor. So anyway, I so appreciated what has been guided to us, or I should say, encouraged by us to get this four-way stop implemented, and I think it will behoove the city to see this done and prevent a possible fatal collision, excuse me. Right now, it's screeching of brakes, it's near collisions. Those don't get registered. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
They say once you've sold something, stop selling. But I'm going to keep selling. I appreciate you guys' support for this. I'm one of the signatories on this list. I have 2 houses on Crescent, and I think 2 problems have made this worse. One is the 4-way stop on either end. The max acceleration is right at that intersection, right? So basically people ramp up and then they start slowing down. So that's problem 1. The other problem that I've noticed is the striping on the streets. We have a lot of schools in the area, so we actually have crosswalks where there's no stop sign. And I think that might be part of the confusion that Cameron, you had, and Lisa had, and other people have, where they come up and they see the stripes and they think, oh, it's a stop, and they kind of slow roll. You got somebody coming the other way. It creates a lot of confusion. Having said that, we still got a lot of people walking that neighborhood. People actually drive into our neighborhood to walk their dogs and their kids in this neighborhood because it's just a beautiful neighborhood. So we actually get a lot more pedestrian traffic than we actually have residents in that particular area. So again, I just want to thank you guys for supporting this, and hopefully we'll get a new stop sign in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Sorry. So now I'll open it again for council comments.
I'll make the motion.
I don't think we have a motion.
This
an-
item was not an action
Yeah.
item,
Oh, no.
but we can bring
Okay.
back.
We're bringing it back. All right.
Yeah, so I think the direction from council is that we want to see recommendations to come as like if we want to put a 4 stop sign there, or, yeah, that's what I think, that's what that direction, right?
Yeah, I'm hearing council consensus for the staff to return at a future meeting in January for a resolution to install an all-way stop at this location.
Okay, perfect. All right, seeing no more items to discuss, I will adjourn